Okay, so I'm punchy, and Chris has something right before we hit broadcast. He's like, "Okay, I got something to say. Just hit broadcast." So here we go. I don't know if you're getting on ramp. I don't know what you're going to get, people, but it's Decoded After Dark, Decoded
Hmm.
Podcast
Which
After
is
Dark.
this is kind of a double up because it's sort of like we in the past we've done summer school, but summer school was kind of during the day and the morning. I don't know if we ever did summer school after dark, as in we kind of did late night with Chids and Clough. So maybe we need to have that side hustle to our side hustle. That there's something just a little bit. I don't know. We could both show up with like pipes and a glass of scotch and just say we're rolling on Decoded right now. You know, have some lounge songs. I like. I actually had nothing to lead off with other than I know, but it's sort of hands up in the air. Here's the so how about this? I like what okay, so here's something we haven't really pushed out on Decoded. Is some of the tweets and social stuff that has kind of fired us up. We don't often go there. We don't lead with it, right? So how about as a lead, and we can go in reverse. Do we want to start talking about Dean Shareski's post and just kind of play around with it a little bit?
Sure.
Does that
Set
work?
it up for us. Set it up for us.
So Dean posted out. Here's the problem. I could check it out. I'd have to flip screens, but there was something to the effect of him posting about the disingenuousness of people. It wasn't about brands, was it? Help me out here. It was sort of Thursday when I first noticed it. It was a post from earlier. It was him tapping sort of the Uber positivity movement, platitude movement, and him finding it suspicious. So there's something suspicious about educators that, kind of go there with the platitudes and the positive and the Jack Handy quotes about EDU. And I got in on it a little bit. I don't remember any of my posts into it, but one of the things that it starts to raise, and this dovetails well with the Twitter conversation that happened today, where Andrew Campbell posted out about a little bit of his frustration with social media, and that it seems that in general social media being used for not moving EDU conversations forward. The conversations that might be forward seem to be loaded with branding or personal promotion, that some of the conversations are petty and they're just contrary and sometimes angry and mean and cruel. Matt Aldridge has posted out about this as well. And then it kind of ended a space in how do you narrow your digital diet? So it was a very sort of big, and as soon as you get like sort of some good chum in the water on some of these Twitter conversations, it gets really, really difficult to sort of follow all the strings. But I think those are kind of all the pieces. And where you kind of ended just before we hit tape was the Hulk smash fists. So Hulk smash EDU for your students. So I don't know how to connect the dots between those three spaces.
I can do it for you. Can I jump in?
Yeah, do something with this one. So Shareski to Aldridge and Campbell to Hulk smash, because I can totally picture the two fists. You can buy those fists. It's the Hulk smash fists.
And I'm saying it now.
It's your personal brand, Hulk smash EDU, or is it smash EDU?
No, I want Hulk smash because I want to attach it to
Marvel's coming at you.
To a superhero.
Dude, Marvel's coming after you.
I'll spell it differently then. I'll spell it differently. How's that?
I like that. Just like the other day, I saw the word folks being spelled FAUXS or something. Folks. Like instead. Anyways, go for it. Connect the dots.
Okay, so I'm thinking like hashtag Hulk HULCK smashes EDU. Okay, I'm calling it now.
It's a long hashtag.
That's part of the fun.
It'd be even funnier. It would be funnier if it's already taken.
And it's not, because
It's
I'm
not,
calling
okay.
it right now. Right now, as we have like the 4 listeners, Brad, Debbie, Suzanne, and Michael, oh, and maybe Dawn, 5
Mhm,
people.
mhm.
Hey, if you're listening, you heard it here first. Hashtag Hulk, HULCK, smashes EDU.
Damn you, Marvel. Damn you. And this is Decoded After Dark.
That's
Hulk.
right. Where we get a little punchy. So okay, so I'm reading these tweets, and I'm feeling the positivity thing is not killing me as much as some of the other stuff. The disingenuous BS that's going back and forth, it's getting on my nerves, but I try to put them aside. People on there selling their brand and writing books 24/7, it's starting to get to me. In fact, I have a great tweet right here. I want to tweet out for people to pre-order my book, which is still untitled. Nobody knows when it's coming out, but you're welcome to send me $25 ahead for hardcover. Pre-order my book, but I don't know when it's coming. Maybe it'll have something to do with Hulk smashes EDU. I don't know, but we'll get to that in a second. So all these gimmicks, all these things going around, I'm like, well, I'm going to have some fun with this, because maybe it's my immaturity. Maybe it's so let's see, let's go deep here after dark. Maybe it's my immaturity as a human being. Maybe it's the deep-seated want to write a book that nobody would buy. Maybe it's looking for attention that I didn't get from my parents when I was a kid. You know, there's a string of psychological issues attached to this. Let's just all put those aside for a second. I want to get those big Hulk fists. And every time my students do something awesome at school, they grab a concept and they get it. I want to take a picture of them with wearing those things and just smashing something to show that they were able to grasp that concept. I'm going to run with that. That's going to be my thing. I gotta find the Hulk hands and buy them. That's the first thing, and then get them into the building. Whatever. I think you're getting my drift here. And I could just start a whole Twitter feed on that, and I could pretend like people care, and then I'm going to make money. Do I really care? No, I don't care, and I'm tired. I'm tired of this stuff. People posting stuff about this and that has nothing to do with any kind of like conversation, which it takes me to I lost it. It was, so we were talking about Dean, we're talking about Andrew. Somewhere in there was something that really got me going on Twitter recently, and now it's gone. I don't know. Oh, the backslapping. You and your 10 followers constantly telling each other how awesome you are. And Chris, you said it best, and I got to find it. But what you said, well, I won't give it any context, but okay. You said something that I to this day, I'm still applauding you. Oh. And you talked about, just flipping through here. You talked about something being like a bunch of white males unboxing their privileged experiences and using Twitter as a way to do this with their other white buddies, backslapping and congratulating. If people just take that alone and consider that says a lot. Now, for me, the whole racial thing is part of it, but I've been seeing some conversations on Twitter that are just like people looking to pick fights. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. 100%. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But it's this business of like not listening to other people. Mm-hmm. Like, how hard is it for you? Well, I guess it is really hard for some people to listen to other people's perspective. I got into it today a little bit with this guy in the States around homework. I know his position on homework. I've seen him go back and forth I've seen this thing play out 100 times. And so I pushed back a little bit. Because there was a consideration there. There was an idea, concept that was put out. I said, well, have you considered this part of that concept? The answer is clearly no, because I got the dodging and I got the this and I got the that. And then at the end, it just ended with he said something, and I told him that his perspective was interesting, because it is. And that's it. Like, I don't feel the need to have to win an argument on social media. I don't need to go there. I know where my position is. I'm open to hearing other people when they're not yelling and screaming that they're right and everybody else is wrong. I'm totally cool with that. But this is where a lot of stuff is going. People trying to prove their point here and there and everywhere. I feel, and I've not really been seeing, I just scroll through that stuff. I just go to the good stuff. I read what you're posting. Well, I always do, but I don't think I'm slapping your back. I think if anything, I retweet some of the stuff you post because I feel like retweeting it, but
where one of the things interesting that I find you do to me, which is always appreciated, is you kind of bump me like, Clough, get in on this. And sometimes I step so far back and I don't kind of engage. Sometimes I'm just kind of listening and watching. So it's kind of like it's a good prompt, because I think in some ways you're more adept at picking up at some of these threads. Like they get in your brain, right? They get in your brain. And I appreciate when you're like, yo, Clough, check this out. Cause I don't notice the stuff that you do sometimes. I really don't. So I appreciate that when you throw that my way. The unboxing part, it's funny how, when that first hit the market, the whole idea of unboxing videos, and people were really hip to it because it was like, well, one, I think part of the unboxing, I don't have this in any particular order, but I think part of the unboxing, the popularity with the unboxing videos was you got a chance to preview something. At the heart of it, you get to preview something. And I will tell you, I totally, one of the unboxing videos that I watched about someone opening up the iPhone box and them telling you flat out, be careful because of the vacuum that it creates, and your phone will go flying off if you're not paying attention to it. Don't do it kind of standing up, because at one point, I don't know if it's still like this, you take the lid off the iPhone box and that vacuum almost lifts the phone right off of its little cradle, right? And there were the dude saying, be careful you do that. And then the next day I saw 3 things in a feed about people like so happy to get their iPhones, they pop the thing off and the thing goes flying and smashes on the floor. So on some level, the unboxing videos were offering valuable information to someone. But part of the unboxing videos, and after, their kids like to watch them because other kids are sort of unboxing toys and all this. At some point, you realize what you're actually seeing there in a lot of ways is also kind of living out your dreams through somebody else's experience. And then if I follow that, then I think to myself, well, then it's also a little bit like witnessing someone else's privilege in what's being touted as an accessible fashion, but it really isn't. You're sort of, I think of the Robin Leach show, remember Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous or whatever. It's a little bit like watching that. Like you're sort of able to kind of, this is an everyday person. You too could make a YouTube video. We're going to unbox, I don't know, LOL dolls, one of the kind of popular toys right now. So I think when my brain kind of connected those dots, it was very much that idea, like somehow that there's value in just hands down kind of promoting, let's say, a vision about EDU or a platitude about EDU that doesn't have necessarily any sustenance to it, and it doesn't sustain you. There's no risk. Could be multi-take. It might not even be necessarily their experience. They're just sort of observing EDU, which is cool. And I love how, who was it just today talking with Carol Campbell on Twitter? Maybe it was Matt Aldridge, and him saying, I think he put out there how he intentionally uses I and we. Like when he is kind of throwing down a post, he understands the power of declaring whether or not this is his experience or this should be our common experience, and how that messages out to people. You know, my response to that is like, yeah, even with the I, maybe it should not just be I, it should be IMO. So you're just kind of like framing it in a way that this is only my opinion, my experience. So even when I'm saying the I, you can decide if it's authentic or you just want to kind of exist in my world. So back to the unboxing thing, it kind of came off, I think I had a little bit of a rant going on when you and I were talking, but the longer that it sat with me, I realized that that's part of the retweet and like hole that happens on social media. And then you pointed out so clearly is that if someone then dares to kind of just put out this promotional package or a pitch package to their follower base without the idea that they should stick around for the conversation afterwards, then that just doubles down on it and makes it even more frustrating. It actually made me wonder, I was thinking about the actual design of Twitter, and, you know, you have followers and who you're following. It would be great if there could be some customization to that. So you could actually put like clients as one of the things, or friends. Like you actually had some different ways to organize the categories so that it's a little bit more heads up display as far as who is it in someone's, you know, their post contacts. And I don't know if that would make their posts any more valuable, but it might also make it a lot more clear, especially for some individuals that are sort of daring to just promote their wares and not have conversation. That was it.
I wonder if, you know, I don't know if we've talked on the podcast about paying for Twitter. I wonder if, I know you've talked about, you've said under certain circumstances you would be willing to pay for Twitter use depending on what it could offer you.
Yeah, I was really, you know what, I think that might have been my previous iteration of Twitter though. And on the on-ramp, you know, you and I talking, when I bounced away from Twitter for a little while, that was part of one of the original conversations, which I never got back. But the criteria would be this. You want me to throw down the criteria?
Go for it.
So the criteria would be that you could make Twitter advertisement free, that you would have control over the character count, that you could... what was the other thing I put in there? Control over the character count, advertisement free. Oh, there were two more things in there. It had to do with the curation. It had to do with the way. You know what? It's gone. It's too bad. That was a last year kind of a conversation.
It'll come back to you. Let's give it some time.
Maybe higher customization, so you could streamline your feed. Yeah, there was something else. Yeah, it was important to me a year ago. That was one of those thoughts that I had a year ago.
Which is interesting because it just shows with time, you obviously change. Things change, right? Their layers are added on, layers are stripped off. Yep. I'm currently, this is what I wanted to say earlier that I couldn't remember, but I remembered and I wrote it down. This is where I'm at currently. I've got this pet peeve with people who throw down questions on Twitter, decent questions around EDU related content, and then don't respond to anybody who responds to their question. And I think you got the brunt of my way of expressing this last week, maybe. And I've been able to tone it down a bit and think about it a little bit more clearly. And here's where I stand. If you're an educator and you drop a question around education and you're not going to respond to people who jump in with their perspective or whatever, what was your purpose of dropping the question in the first place? And I don't care if you have 100,000 followers and you don't have time. I'm sorry. I don't care. You're not a celebrity. You're a friggin' teacher. Your job is to stand in front of people and teach them. And I guess that's a thing of mine. If you're a teacher and I guess you've got, over 100,000 followers and you probably have written a book or you've done something of significance to the educational world. And so people are following you. I don't buy this business. If you're going to drop it, you need to stand behind it. Now, somebody's going to say, oh, look at this dude. Who does he think he is? Say what you want. I'm going to express my opinion. This is maybe it's because this is my favorite part of the social media. I love that somebody could drop a question and it's going to get me thinking about it. And I may even tweet you my response or my position. Then we could have a back and a forth and I can actually learn something and maybe you learn something too. But this is my new measuring stick. When I see like a question, I look at the thread and I look to see how many times the person who tweeted the original question jumps in. And you know who did a really good job of that recently?
Call them out. That was
Trevor McKenzie.
That was an amazing thread. I was mind blown. Because not only was he responding to the original. Okay, so it's like for anyone that's ever been in a Twitter chat, and you have a nice kind of sequential method of 5 questions or whatever, Q1 A1, Q2 A2. There's a pretty sweet method of organization there where you can kind of go back and find stuff. Kudos to the dude to do long form Twitter chat here, because he was intermittently and at different times responding to so many pieces of that conversation. I couldn't have done that. Like I was Trevor, I was deeply impressed. Like that was cool. That was very cool.
I think you could have done it and you would do it. I've seen you post out questions and anxiously wait for people's responses and people just don't seem to jump in, which is annoying because you've been asking some really good questions. And selfishly, I'd love to hear, excuse me, I'd love to hear what people have to say on those topics. And I find people just aren't biting. I'm trying to find some of these tweets because, it's Trevor McKenzie at Trev_McKenzie. And I saw this, I saw his thread and so here was his question, November 22nd, okay? On November 22nd, he said, I just spent the last 2 days writing my report cards with my students. I asked them about their strengths. I asked them to share a future learning goal. We looked at their body of work and we selected a grade together. Why haven't I been doing this my entire career? It got 208 responses, 1.4 thousand retweets, and 7.1 thousand likes. So as I go through this thread, the dude is responding. People are jumping in and saying something. They're commenting or they're asking a question or they're asking for clarification. And he's jumping in. Jump, 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 jump. So I respond and I just said, I'm just seeing this post now. And I appreciate the fact that you're part of the conversation. Some people tweet things out and then don't engage with the responses. Good on you for sticking around. And he responds. He says, cheers. I truly value the discourse. Much appreciate your tweet. You know what? I'm following him and I'm coming back to his page because I want to see what's going on. Because this is someone he's doing it right. He's doing it for the right reasons. Maybe he's doing it for the wrong reasons. I don't know. What I do know is he's taken the time and he's being authentic enough to jump in and talk about his question. And people are gonna totally poo-poo this. Well, they were. I was reading it and they're like, what do you mean it's your job to do evaluations and you shouldn't be talking to kids about it? You get all types of people. And his responses are what they are. That's big to me. That's big. I'm dying of these people. He's written a book. He's got stuff going on. I know he's been on the EdTech circuit with EdTech team. His book's published by the EdTech team, and he's in Victoria. So props to another Canadian working his tail off. But, you know, when you do it like this, people like me care. People like me pay attention. He's got 12,000 followers. He's responding. I just don't have the time. And I feel like, you know, I'm going to tell you what I think. And it makes me feel good, makes me feel authentic. And maybe I'm not doing it for the right reasons. But, you know, like there's a lot of negative, and I'm just scrolling past it. And I'm looking for this stuff. I'm looking for people who actually want to talk. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm going to learn something here. I'm going to get these different perspectives from these different people. And hopefully I can gather up enough information that can help me with my practice, because this is what I do every day.
Let me ask you a sidebar here. What do you make of this? So one of the things that he did in the conversation is he assured and reassured when people were sort of looking for the minutia of how did you do this? He said, blog post is coming. Blog post is coming. So he was sort of working on a backstory so that people could kind of do the long form of how to get there. So he did. He posted the blog. He posted the blog on, I'm on his website right now. It's called Student Voice Infused Assessment Conferencing, November 27th, 2018. So, and he goes through kind of step by step how he did it. What's interesting, and it's long, dude, like his blog post is easily, I wish it gave the word count, but he included the original tweet, and then it's easily, I'm gonna guess somewhere around 1,500 words. So it's a decent length blog post. 2 likes on his blog. 2 likes. His original tweet, approximately 7,000 likes. What do you make of that? What do you make of that? Sorry, it's 1,400 retweets, at least according to his feed on his website, and 7,100 likes, 208 comments, you know, kind of in step with what you were saying. But what do you make of that? There's only 2 likes on his blog post.
This is what I make of this.
Yeah, what do you think of that?
Number one, it's really easy on Twitter to like anything. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got into the habit of, I see a tweet and I agree with it, or I want to tell the person that I give them a thumbs up, so I like it. It's not easy to go to a blog post and read through it. That takes time, that takes energy. That's next level stuff. The fact that people like the fact that you clicked on his website to go shows that you've got some interest in seeing what's going on there. The liking of blog posts, I think that, to me, that's dead in the water. That was dead a long time ago. And
what, the analytics on a blog post?
No, the fact that people are going to go read through it and like the post.
Okay.
I feel like that culture's gone, in my opinion. Like when I write a blog post, I can see how many hits it gets. Nobody comments and nobody likes anything, but people have visited. Some people have even, after the fact, you know, messaged me and said, hey, I just read it. Good stuff. Can you tell me more about this or that? But nobody's liking anything. Nobody's leaving any comments either. Which takes me back, I'm really cool with that, because when I go back to why I started blogging, it was never for anybody else. It was for me. Just like today, somebody asked a question on Twitter about reflective practice. And I responded by saying that my reflective practice involves, it was Ryan O'Donnell, who's got a really cool podcast with Brian Briggs called Check This Out. And Ryan said, you know, how do people, these are different ways you can reflect on your practice. How do you reflect on your practice? And I responded and I said, well, this podcast is one part. The other part I've started doing is the vlogging through this podcast. You know, I'm not vlogging for anybody else. Like I share it with you because I'm like, hey, check it out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like, I'm not vlogging for anybody else. I'm vlogging for me. I like the medium. I enjoy making the video. I have a little bit of fun with it. But at the end of this school year, all those vlogs are going to be the experience of an elementary school teacher at different pivotal points in the school year, right? Like I talked about Halloween, I talked about the week before Christmas, like I talk about yard supervision and how it works. These things just pop up in my day to day. And at the end of this year, and you know this about me, I will have created and collected a year's worth of thoughts and reflections on what happens during a school year. That's a big deal to me. So the fact that nobody's watching it, the fact that nobody's liking it, all that is secondary because that's not why I got into it. So it's kind of neat because I'm reflecting as I talk to you about this, about my experience with having started a blog many years ago. It was never for anybody else. And to me, when you talk about liking a blog post, I've read lots of blog posts. I don't comment and I don't like them. I don't know why. I think I'll tell you one reason. When I go to comment, I'll leave a comment and I'll hit enter, and it'll say I'll lose my comment and say I need to log in.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
done. I'm gone. Sorry. If I've got to authenticate and all that, I get what it's there for. But if I have to do all that, it's not happening. I'm out. But yeah, it's so much easier on Twitter, in my opinion, Chris, for somebody to just see the tweet and, hey, I like what he's doing here. It's so easy to hit that heart. But it's a whole other level to click on the blog post, to read the post, to like the post, to comment on the post.
It's why I kind of dig, and I never pursued it much. It's why I like Medium. It's one of the things I really like about Medium is because you can, now I think you also have to have a Twitter account in order to do this, but you can just highlight a part of what somebody says and it does an automatic extraction and you can put a comment on it and then forward it into your feed. It's a really neat, I think it's a cool tool within Medium. And it just so happens that if your PLN is existing on Twitter, they play nicely together. But I hear you as far as, people wanting to comment on specific parts of someone's blog post or, add their context and their experience onto it. It can become, I guess we've just been trained this way. It's inconvenient. It's really inconvenient to do some sort of a response on a long form. And the counter side to this as well is there might even be some people that think by leaving a comment here on a blog that no one's going to see it. There's not going to be any interaction with it. It's like a different island altogether that doesn't speak to the space where it launched from. And I think that's an incompatibility issue sometimes with blogs in general. Like I would really love, so I have my stuff all housed on WordPress. I wish that when someone posted a comment, if I approve it, that it would automatically forward that comment back to the Twitter feed with the actual blog post that it was associated with. Like I wish there was that wraparound just to kind of keep it in the space where, the party's happening. Because I have seen that too. Like I've had people commenting. As far as the number of comments that go, it's interesting. On WordPress where I exist, it's a lot of WordPress bloggers. So people that are just kind of in that space. I do have some people from Twitter that will go there and kind of check stuff out. But I find that the comments are entirely separate. I've never really gone the distance to find out whether or not someone is, let's say, liking the promoted feed to Twitter, because each of the WordPress hits comes with I can put a little excerpt there. I don't know if they've actually read the whole thing. So starting to interact with some individuals that have liked it, I've tried to start some conversation for some critical feedback for where the piece kind of connected with their pedagogy and, if they felt like there was something I could have explored at a deeper level in the piece that I wrote. So it's, I think, I don't know if we're kind of leading into this space is, there are times where you just capture your thoughts and you kind of dump them somewhere. And dumping them somewhere out in the open, like a message in a bottle might be even too intentional, just as a open source library for someone to kind of find, I think is really cool. I think that in a lot of ways, that's what's happening with Decoded. Like, come find us. We're here. You want to check in with us, you can listen live. You got something you want to say, tweet us. We tend to have our device while we're talking. I think and I don't, not intentionally trying to take this in a different direction, but I was fascinated by the conversation from Paul McGuire when he posted that short piece on his blog about teachers being political, and that, you know, there needs to be some people need to step up. Teachers need to step up, that teaching in itself is political. So step up, be political. And I was fascinated by that because there was a lot in the actual piece. I encourage anyone listening, go check it out. It's a good piece. It's a thought-provoking piece. But one of the statements in there sort of spoke to teachers because they're in the public, that they have the opportunity to be opinion leaders. And I've never actually heard that phrase before. Had you heard that before? Opinion leaders? There's an obligation to being an opinion leader. And no. I found that an interesting turn of phrase. Because then later on in the article in his post, he mentioned an individual that he thought was sort of carrying the mantle for political agitation and conversation in Ontario. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. And the individual was more than happy to sort of get in on the conversation when I tagged them into it. Like, what's your sense of being the person that's carrying the ball for the rest of Ontario here? And that's all on Twitter. Go find it. It's there. Paul McGuire's post. I wish I had the name of his blog post. Where's the political voice in Ontario? Where's the teacher's political voice in Ontario? And definitely check out the Twitter feed and see if you can sort of do the article, get an opinion, and then read the Twitter conversation, see the opinion there. But part of it is I am of the type, I think, when it comes to, let's say, being political or being someone that's kind of revealing, decoding what goes on in being a teacher, is I kind of like just to do the Easter egg kind of approach. I'm going to have an idea. I'm going to write it and edit it in a way that I feel is touching on as nervously close to my soul and my nervous system, and then post it. And I feel as if I get that close to the heart of what's kind of what I'm observing in front of me, someone may find it, someone might not find it. Do I promote my blog to Twitter? Well, yeah, for the previous reason. That's kind of where people are going to jump and have a conversation. But I've also had people leave comments on my WordPress site. I don't know if I'm entirely comfortable with the idea of moving into that space of being an opinion leader, but I don't know if I necessarily shy away from it if someone's willing to engage in conversation with me. So there was definitely some interesting posts this week.
Yeah, it's funny. On my notes here, all I have is social media bonanza, because that's basically what we've been talking about the whole time.
Decoded after dark.
Hey, and my language is still appropriate.
We've managed. I think we managed. I'm
doing a good job. I'm going to pat myself on the back. Are you going to slap my back too? Thanks. Should I advertise?
Well, we got to get back to this.
Okay, so I'm gonna look for those. Okay, they used to be around. They used to be around, like you could see them at Walmart. But here's the other thing too. I don't want to pay $30 for my. I don't want to pay $30 for my gimmick. You know, like, but maybe that's a sacrifice I have to make, because there are people out there doing stuff like pirates, and there are people out there like dressing up like Evel Knievel and stuff. So, I mean, for me to buy the Hulk Smash, my kids are going to love that, eh? My students are going to love that. In fact, here's a good one I'll share with you from many years ago. When I taught grade 2 about, oh my goodness, a long time ago, like 10 or 12 years ago. I was at a school where reading levels were low. And it was a school where, parental support was not where you'd want it to be, generally speaking. And I had lots of boys in my class. And I had to do something to get them to buy in, because I realized that reading and writing was not their thing. They weren't interested because there was no interest. Like, nobody had ever tried to really find a way in. And I'm not taking away from the amazing teachers that they had before me, because truly, I say this like 100% sincerity, the teachers that they had in grade 1 and kindergarten were amazing. They made my job easy, because when the kids got to me in 2, they were solid. Like, they understood the way a classroom operated, and those teachers really did a wicked job. So it just wasn't, things weren't just not working out for these kids, generally speaking. I found out early on that a bunch of the boys were playing with wrestling characters, like the
back in the day,
back in the day with the ring. They're like the size of my mic. They're plastic, but you could move their arms and legs. And these kids had a ton of them. So, I say to them, you guys like wrestling? And they're like, yeah. And they're telling me all about it. And then I kind of start getting into it with them and telling them about my experience as a kid watching Hulk Hogan and stuff. And the kids were like, I could see something was working for them. So I remember saying to the EA in my class, we got to do something here with their reading levels. If they can if they can show growth, then they get to wear like the WWF. It was WWF, the belt. I'll buy a belt. I'll make a belt, and they could wear it like they're the champ for the day, kind of thing.
That's awesome.
And they loved it. Like, they loved the idea that, we can't talk about this anywhere else. None of the other teachers are going to tell us wrestling's okay. Mm-hmm. And there's this dude who's like, no, you want to be the champ of the world? You got to move your reading level. You can't stay here. You got to improve. And so we kind of did like a loose version of that. And it was fun. Like, it was fun. So I'm thinking, get these big Hulk foam gloves. Make sure the kids know they can't be hitting each other, because that's, you're going to have some kids who want to do that because they're fun, they're foam. And when they get a concept, when they understand time or money or measurement, see, I got the numeracy in there. That's the first chapter of the book. Numeracy connected to the novelty. Okay. Yeah, you like that?
I do.
Because numeracy is the big thing now. Like, I'm learning how to become a better math teacher. So I got to connect that numeracy. And, they're going to Hulk smashes EDU, man. Publishers are going to come knocking on my door. EdTech team's going to want to write my book for me.
You got me going back, and you obviously the whole WWF or WCW or whatever it was back in the day, was that pre-social media, or you just weren't savvy enough to sort of think that you're going to do the crossover?
It was pre, and in fact, at that particular school, I remember, this is so cool that you asked me that question. It was pre-social media, and I remember a teacher down the hall, my grade 2 teaching partner, was talking about this thing called Twitter that she had just read about in the local newspaper, and one of the local writers wrote something up on this 140 character mini blogging site for people to connect with each other. And it was funny because my partner, her idea, and this was, to all of us, it was still like smartphones and connecting with people instantly was still relatively new. And so her thing was, she was excited that her and her friends who had mobile devices could get Twitter, then be able to communicate fast and effective back and forth all day. So it's really cool that you asked that question, because I remember I had read the article, and then she was talking about it, and I was blown away because she never struck me as a a tech type, but that this had caught her attention because she could see leveraging it in a way that would benefit her and her friends. So no, these were the days when it was rare to have a desktop computer in your classroom.
Yeah.
We still didn't, in our board, we didn't have the interactive whiteboards yet. And so, like, I remember I had a computer in my classroom because I had like 3 students using it for their learning, but I also could use it. Like, I remember huddling. I'd bring the kids over to the back and I'm like, come here, I want to show you something. And that's when I really started learning about blended learning and stuff, because I had this desktop with this little monitor, and I would bring all 20 of my grade 2 students to the monitor, and I would teach a lesson, and I would use stuff from the internet on the monitor to show them. And it was like a secret operation, black ops, because if the principal found out that my computer was being used for something other than the 3 kids learning with it, I might get it taken away. Which, like, stuff like that upsets me about my work. Stuff like that upsets me because one administrator will walk and say, I love how you're using the technology to benefit your teaching and the student learning. And another person walks in and says, you're using that to teach kids, and that's not what it's for. It's for those 3 kids to help them learn how to read. Like, we can do it all. In fact, we were tracking these students every time they touched that computer to do their work. I was documenting because that was part of my job, right? As part of my reporting. It just blows my mind. I would literally huddle around the computer. Literally, come here, everybody grab a spot. Can everybody see the monitor? Because we're going to talk about this right now. And I found something on the internet. You know what the internet is? I found something on the internet. It's going to help you with your learning. It was awesome.
You did some time traveling there on me. Okay, so how long have you been teaching for?
This is my 17th year.
Good for you.
Yeah, thanks, because it feels like a lifetime.
So, well, it is. I mean, it's packed. It's packed with memory, packed with life, packed with connection. That's a lifetime. That's worthy for sure. Here's what struck me as you were saying this. I wondered about whether or not you could write a blog post or make a video that would be a video that you would make in your first year of teaching about something that you discovered that you're just blown away by, something that you did, something that you sort of discovered, something that you were test driving that you thought was just the bomb, but you do it from the perspective, you do it with current technology, but you create the video as if you're in your first year teaching. So 17 years ago, something that never made it to social media, it didn't necessarily make it to like a blog post. I'm thinking back to stuff, you know, it's so when I was at faculty, and remember, we said we were going to do this and we never did this. We didn't even get to it in this actual episode.
Let's start now. We can put interplanetary travel for the next one, and we can do let's
traveling to Mars.
We have a little bit of time, so let's just do it.
So when I was in faculty, so I started teaching in 2005. When I was in faculty, I had several lessons on how to position yourself in a classroom so that you could write on the chalkboard and keep an eye on the class. And the teacher, no joke, said so that you don't turn your back on the class and you don't risk having like kids throw paper balls at you. That's what was a part of my faculty training. And then on top of that, the 2.0 lesson to that, 2.0 was how to use an overhead. Because when you're writing on the overhead, so and if you're looking behind you and looking forward, like, and one of the actual instructions, never look into the lens. Never look into the lens. That was a lesson. And I'll go one bigger. I'm sitting in the Education Commons at faculty, and I'm sitting at the computers there writing something for one of my teachers, and I can hear 2 other candidates across from me, and they're talking about, I forget what they were talking about. They were talking about something about, they were really frustrated at the fact that their math graduates and they're being taught how to teach math. Now, at the time, I was thinking to myself, that's unfortunate, because there was never anything, because when I came through faculty, so I came through as a tech teacher, there was never any course that I took that taught me how to translate what I learned in industry as a chef to work teaching students. Like I didn't take a culinary course to teach me how to teach culinary to students. It was teaching courses, like it was like pedagogical courses. It was constructivist courses. I took a course on Freire. Like it was these really cool, like, here's stuff that we're going to teach you about the reality of teaching. It's up to you to bring your specialty to the classroom. Marry the two, go for it. But some of the individuals that were taking math and English and science, they actually took courses in math or English and science to teach them how to teach. And they were kind of frustrated with it. So I shared my experience. I'm like, you know what? Yesterday we had a lesson on how to use an overhead. And those two potential math teachers were like, I would love to learn how to use an overhead. Early ed tech, right? I would love, like, I'm so scared to use an overhead in class. I'm like, don't look in the lens. Like, I'm like, that was lesson number one. And positioning yourself sort of like, you know, at sort of like these 45-degree angles so that you're never actually turning your back right to the chalkboard. But if I were to, like, that would totally be a blog post right now that someone would go, really? Really? That's what your early teaching was about? So 17 years ago, off the top of your head, you think there's a topic that people go, that's messed. I can't even believe like that was kind of groundbreaking.
I don't know if you call it groundbreaking or not. I was using, in my first year of teaching, or my second year, I guess. However, my first year in an elementary school, I was using a Palm Pilot to track assessment and evaluation data.
That's awesome.
I felt like I was living in the future. It was, and I'll tell you, this is the.
Did you have a hip cradle for it, so you could snap it there?
I didn't have a hip cradle, but I had a nice leather pouch that it would go into. It was legit.
That's awesome.
So what was really awesome was, so I told my wife I wanted one. She bought it for me. And again, no connectivity, right? Like no Wi-Fi, none of that stuff. It just literally, I had to plug it into a computer so I could download the information or upload stuff. And then there was
that's so pure, baby. That's pure hard drive. 250 megs.
I bought it, and the only place selling this software, this teacher assessment evaluation software, was from Ottawa. So I remember sending them an email and then paying via MasterCard through the email. And then they sent me a disk. I put the disk in the computer, ran the software, and then I connected it to my device. And it was awesome because I would literally go to school, and as kids were doing, I was a gym teacher for the second half of the year because I was working with primary students as a planning time teacher, and gym was one of the things I was responsible for. And I hated the paper and pencil in the gym, but with my stylus and the touch screen, I was like recording stuff or whatever, and then I come home, throw it on the computer, and it would do all kinds of magic for me. I remember doing that at the time, and the principal that I had was like right into it. He loved it. He thought it was cool. He kind of started to learn a little bit about me and like my love for technology and stuff. So he was like, whatever. But I could totally see some people freaking out. Totally. Here's a good one for you. In today's day and age, some people don't have an actual day book on their desk. It's digital. It's like in their Google, they create a Google document template or whatever, and they enter all their day plans there. And I know that makes me nervous because I was trained in teachers college, and then in the classroom, in the field, I was trained to always have your day book on your desk so that if your administrator or supervisory officer walked in, they went over to your desk, they'd look down, they'd see that your plans were there, that you actually made plans. And then some of my counterparts that I work with now, they'll tell me, oh, I don't have a day book. It's on Google Docs. I'm like, what if the admin walks in and they want to see it? They're like, well, I could always bring it up for them. It just makes me nervous. So I still do paper and pencil day plans. I mean, it's weak in terms of, you know, in the numeracy block, there might be like 7 words or something. It's not in depth at all, but it says clearly which direction I'm going and what I'm doing. It just makes me nervous when my colleagues tell me that their stuff is digital, which is really funny because I've spent how many years trying to go digital with all kinds of stuff, but not the day book. So it's interesting, the stuff that you learned in faculty. I don't remember a lot of the stuff I learned in Teachers College. I felt like I was jumping through a lot of hoops. Honest to God, it felt like they put the hoop and they say jump through. And then as soon as you get through, they're like, okay, next hoop's coming out in 2 days. Make sure you jump through that one too.
I had an instructor that I think it was the instructor that led our course design. So that was valuable because so many of the way that it worked for the tech teachers, because I was in a cohort of all tech teachers, mechanics, electricians, plumbers, estheticians. Who else was in there? Chefs. So these are all individuals that were transitioning between industry into teaching. And the year that I came in, 2004, 2005, was a good year for, they called them BTT, broad-based BBT, broad-based technology. So they were looking at tech and they were starting to look at it in sort of a holistic fashion and look at the connectivity between the different techs and the different certifications. It was a cool time to come in. And that's when, you know, I was able to get a job really, really quickly. But in that course, apart from it being really cool because the teacher put together, so there was a grade 9 course. I don't know if it existed at the time, but right now there's a grade 9 course called Integrated Technologies. And what it is the kids get a sampling of different techs. And if you do it really well, then you hang kind of a theme or an overarching kind of approach so that, you know, if you happen to be offering plumbing, hospitality, and woodworking, it's not just individual staunches on each of those techs. You have sort of like a connectivity between it. So back in 2004, we were designing something like this because in my group, there was an esthetician, a hair person, there was a construction person, hospitality, and I forget what the other one was. And we had to build a course based on that, on an integrated course, which was really challenging, but got us to think about interdisciplinary. It was sort of like that early idea of classrooms without walls. Like if you actually flowed from one course to another. Like I said, that's back in 2004, 2005. What comes to mind was that exact same teacher also was extremely political, and would almost like in sort of like almost military fashion get us ramped up in class, talking about where if you go into a school and a tech course is being taught by someone that isn't a tech teacher, you need to fight it. You got to fight it. And he would say, what are you going to do? And the class would respond, fight it. What are you going to do? Fight it. What are you going to do? And it would just, and everyone's like, yeah, we're going to keep our jobs. Like it was like pre-union inculcation. And I just imagine like it's just, it's coming back to me. I'm like, I can't believe it. I was sort of in on it. I'm like, yeah, we're going to save our jobs. We're going to save our jobs, because, and I had no clue what I was fist pumping for, apart from the fact that I just, in a school, you make sure that the tech teachers are fighting for that. And I never shared that experience with any of, my colleagues that were in core courses like math or English, but I don't imagine they were doing the same kind of cheering. We didn't hear anything going on in the next classroom over. Imagine what they thought, in our classroom, they could hear us screaming, we're going to fight, we're going to fight. But that was a part of my faculty training as well, to sort of, watch that political line and make sure that only tech teachers were being put into tech courses. And when I got there, what's interesting, you could actually have a letter signed off by the superintendent to say that, yeah, you're okay to teach that tech course if you weren't a tech teacher.
Interesting. Can I say something about the union
Yeah.
or association that you belong to?
Yeah.
I remember in my first year, my first year in elementary school, I remember the first time teachers were told, "Hey, at lunch, after everybody's done eating, go to room whatever. There's going to be a union meeting." And I remember thinking, "What is going on here?" Like it was so foreign to me. And
Mm-hmm.
this is I have to connect this to the desperation that teachers experience to try to get a job. I
Mm-hmm.
have to make that connection because I needed to get a job. And was I desperate? Looking back, I would say yes. I think like new teachers are, they'll do whatever they need to do to get that permanent contract. And I remember going to this meeting and thinking, these people are crazy. Like they're, the union steward at the time was telling us, okay, make sure if you're doing this, then you're doing that. And the principal can't ask for this without that. And just kind of giving everybody the lowdown of the last association meeting for the association representatives. I remember thinking to myself, these people are crazy. What are we doing here? Why am I paying these people this kind of money? And then with time and experience, you run into somebody who is going to try to take advantage of you or is going to ask you to do something that clearly they shouldn't be asking you to do for a number of different reasons. And then once you get burned, you realize it's what the association does and that is there to support you, blah, blah, blah. But that desperation when you're trying to get a contract, you'll do almost anything to get a contract. And I think when Paul McGuire talks about we must be political, and he's not referring to this type of politics.
No.
But this is a type of politics that I believe teachers should be fluent in.
Mm-hmm.
They should understand their rights because, dude, people will step on you. Whether they respect you or not, they will step on you. I have one more great story on how an administrator that I worked for, that I got along with, asked me to do something. And I did it because I respected and valued the administrator, but I should have never done because it should have never been asked of me. And it was when it was brought to me, it was like, I need your help. And nobody above him would have ever allowed this to happen. But it was like, well, what's going to be best for the kids? If we do it this way, it's best for the kids. If we don't do this way, it's not good for the kids. And I know my association would have said, we're not here to defend the kids. We're here to help you. Make sure that you're okay. You can come to work every day. So here's the story. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I was teaching grade, I think it was grade 2. Maybe I had a 1-2 that year. But anyway, long story short, there were a bunch of classes, bunch of grade 1 classes, bunch of grade 2 classes, and a 1-2. And the situation was that something to do with I was at my cap, but there were some students and they, for one reason or another, they were in my class, but they had to be moved out of my class. That's what it was. And they were going to basically turn 2 other classes into split 1-2 classes. And the principal didn't want to do that. The principal had already created all the classes. The principal had created, like, everything was done. And the people above him said, no, you need to take these 2 kids and move them. And you need to put one of them here, one of them there. And it was going to disrupt, it was going to make the kids feel bad because they were going to be like with 1 or 2 other kids in another room. And it was going to be disruption. So here was, it would be best for the kids if we put them in your room and you went above the cap, but on paper, those kids still existed in the rooms that they were supposed to go to. So I was going to have 2 or 3 extra bodies in my class. It was never going to be recorded that they were in my class. On the record, they belonged to other teachers, but they were going to be with me for the whole year. So I'm looking at this person like, is this for real? The response is, yeah. I mean, I feel like I can ask you, I can talk to you about this. How do you feel? And I'm like, well, I'll do what you want me to do. I'm not gonna say no. And I was like, okay, awesome. And then we did it. And it was one of the biggest pains in my rear end ever, because I remember making a deal like, okay, every time, so whenever something had to go home, the office would only send me the number of copies that was on my list. So I had to keep gently reminding people, I need 2 more. And they're like, no, you don't. And it was one of those things where I thought there was a camera on me, because I'm looking around like, is this a joke? Like, I'm doing you guys a huge favor and nobody's helping me out. Like, think of report cards. I'm writing report cards in other people's report card accounts because I don't have access. They can't give me access. So I'm at school typing up report cards at lunch because I can't do it at home because I don't have access to this kid's report cards. I'm constantly begging people for extra resources because nobody's giving me enough for the number of kids in my class. Now, it's a great story, and it's unfortunate that it's so long ago that it's lost its luster, because I used to be able to tell it really well. But it's stuff like that. Like, and I wasn't even desperate. I had my full-time permanent contract. I was working with great people. It was not a bad situation, but should I have been asked to do that? Probably not. If I was a new teacher, you run the risk. Like, if you say no, well, what does that mean? Are you going to get a recommendation from this administrator, or are they just going to toss you aside because you didn't do what they wanted? Now, I know people will hear this and they know they would never do that. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. It happens in all professions. It happens to the best of us. It happens to the worst of us. People will walk over you and they'll do what they have to sometimes to make sure their agenda is fulfilled. But I think back and I think I just didn't understand the protection. And I use that word protection on purpose because sometimes you need protection. Sometimes you need a shield in front of you because someone's coming at you so hard. You need somebody or something to stand up for you, and your association will do that. Unfortunately, they also stand up for the people that deserve nobody to stand up for them for some of the things that they have been accused of. But that's due process, right? It's making sure you protect your members. I get that. Anyway, that has nothing to do with tech or anything, but I thought, thinking back to my first few years, I never understood the power or the necessity of an association until you get yourself into a situation where someone is like, no, you're going to do this. And you're like, I don't think I should be. No, you're doing it.
Here's the, I guess I don't know if I told you, I did 2 or 3 years as branch president at my school. So I've done that's about as deep as you can go as a contract teacher in getting involved at school level in the union. So some of the stuff as far as, going to bat and helping other educators out, I'm versed in that. And I get the it was the best of us and it was the worst of us that sometimes those conversations lead to. What you've got me thinking about is, and there's no way maybe we should even flesh this one out, but moving forward, and I guess I don't know if you folks, your contract is being negotiated, but ours is being negotiated coming up this spring. And part of it was interesting when Paul McGuire was mentioning the political action, the capacity for teachers to step up and voice and activate and become kind of mobilized. I think this spring there's going to be some interesting moments that kind of spring out of the negotiations, especially with the current government, which I have no sense of where it's going. But if we measure, if we can measure if we could forecast what could be in the sort of like the negotiations, I expect this will be a very active contract negotiation session. I'm expecting. And who knows, there could be a lot more educators that step up and have something to say at that point. And, maybe they'll, now specifically McGuire was talking about, I think, individuals stepping up on social media as part of the public forum. I know that in general, some of the individuals that would never say anything on social media will be on the front line as far as, picketing and protesting. Like they'll do it in real life. They're going to be there. So yeah, just sort of waiting and watching to see how that plays out come the springtime. That's crossed fingers. Let me twist it that way. It almost looked like I was dropping something on thing, but that's crossed fingers that it sort of goes, smooth and everyone gets, in step with what's best for the kids and best for the individuals that are in the class helping the kids, whomever they are. But I'll be interested to see how social media will be a part of that conversation come the springtime.
I didn't think we'd go there, but we're there. Okay, so let's see. We talked a lot about social media, how it's going these days with authenticity and brands and the noise, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to call it the noise. And then we kind of jumped into a little bit about our first years. And I like the way you spun it, our first years and what would be a great blog post then.
Relevant, non-relevant. Yeah.
Relevant, non-relevant.
You sort of if you came across a reflection from 17 years ago, did you have any reflective practice in your first year of teaching?
No, dude, my first year was survival. My first year was total survival.
Me neither.
And it's unfortunate. I really believe it's unfortunate. And I'll tell you why. Again, I was desperate. So when I got the call to teach grade 7 and 8, I said yes, even though I knew it wasn't for me. Like I had never, in my, at the faculty, I was primary junior. And then I got my intermediate after, because I knew that it would help me become, what's the word I'm looking for? Like more marketable, right? Yeah. And I took special education. Like I did what I could to gather up evidence that I would be an asset to your school. And at the time, there were lots of grade 7 and 8 jobs, because I think the grade 7 and 8 teachers were jumping to high school if they could. And the people below 7 and 8 didn't want it. So it was almost like if you were in it, you really loved it and you stayed, or you got out of it by going to high school, and then everybody underneath you didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I remember doing it and not even liking it. Like I look back and I have some fond memories and it was a good time, but I came home every night and then prepared like a madman because I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't really like it. So it was like totally trying to survive. And I was learning my craft because I felt like I didn't learn. When the rubber met the road, I didn't really know what I was doing. So I was depending on the people around me to kind of guide me, and I observed them and watched how they did it. So I'm glad that's over. I wonder if it would have been a totally different story if I was in grade 1 or 2 in my first couple of years. I wonder if I'd feel differently about it.
Here's a whacked question. Do you think you'd be a better teacher now if you had started your reflective practice in your first year of teaching? And the reason I say this is that we've connected with many first year teachers where their reflective practice, they're going whole hog. They're dumping it on Twitter, they're blogging, they're podcasting. And there's a certain, they've drank the Kool-Aid. They're starting their reflective practice right now. Year 1, year sub 1, they're pre-teaching candidates and dropping their reflective practice online. So it's hard question. That do you think because part of the question I think is embedded in, since you've become a reflective practitioner, has it improved your teaching? And if so, had you started in like year 1 or year 2, like would you just be, you'd be like you'd be golden by now. Golden.
I think there'd always be some kind of issue. There'd always be something there pulling at you. I don't know. I mean, I think I listen to your question and I think to myself, I've always been relatively reflective. But in that first year, it was just one of those things where it's like, it just felt like I was in water and I was constantly being pushed down into the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're fighting for air, when I was fighting for air, I wasn't going to take time to reflect. When I would come up for air, I would literally like, okay, get what you need and go back under. There was no time or no understanding that the reflection might help, that the reflection might be air in and of itself, and that it would feed me long enough underneath the water. I don't know if I would have been able to do that. I don't know if I got that. I know now a lot of my reflection is around, am I reaching my students? And this year in particular, the reflection about whether I'm reaching my students has to do with the human side of it, not so much the pedagogy. It's there, but it's more like, am I reaching these kids at a level that's affecting them as humans, not just learning, but like, do they think that I care for them? Do they feel comfortable and safe in my classroom based on the way that I treat them and my non-negotiables and how I run my classroom? That's where a lot of my reflection's living. And also I'm spending a lot of time reflecting on, as you know, like with the vlogs and stuff, like about the process of teaching in an elementary school over the course of a school year. So when you wrap all those things together, I feel like it's rich, and I feel like I don't have it 100%, but that's okay because I'm not looking to do it right like 100% of the time. I'm looking for growth. And so as I continue to reflect, what's gonna keep, like, I feel like it's not just a straight line, right? It's like, okay, I'm leaving over here and then I figure something out and I come back over here, and sometimes I drop back down, but I'm always trying to go north. I'm always trying to get there. What about yourself? Like, how do you see yourself with respect to your reflective practices now? What they were like when you started?
Yeah, I think that when I started, so I often think about some of my early reflections that I got to paper. It had to do with, am I actually remembering my own experience? So I got really twisted up in, is this lived experience or is it the theory that I've just learned at school? I had a real hard time kind of differentiating between what was classroom experience, what was restaurant experience, and where's the literature taking me? And often looked at it like almost kaleidoscopic, like it was kind of fractured, and I couldn't necessarily see what the true picture was because it seemed to be kind of evolving and changing. And that's in some ways what's fascinating about, let's say the current generation of graduates coming out of faculty and their access to a PLN that is teaching, a robust PLN that is teaching. And I think about that paradox of what they might speak to without having in-class experience to tether it to. It must be incredibly challenging because you want to be a part of the conversation. You want to broaden your own learning, and let's say with the PLN, you can be talking let's say a digital PLN and using Twitter, You can be talking at length with somebody that is 10, 15 years into teaching, and you're not even in front of a classroom yet. And you're sort of speaking, you're in the same water. You're sort of, I think maybe the difference being is the individual you're talking to, their feet are all the way down to the sandy floor, and you're kind of in a inner tube kind of floating on the water. But you're in the same kind of water in the same conversation about EDU. When I first started, I don't think I had anyone that I thought I could talk to. And I think that's what my first measure of reflective practice was that I would have to be sharing with someone and they would have to comment back. And that was a little bit my apprenticeship route too. Everything that I did when I was learning to be a chef there was constant oversight and constant redirection and constant, like, your form isn't right. You're not watching your numbers. Like, there was a lot of kind of constant hard stops that I would have to take and change direction and do it according to the template. So when I started teaching, there was a lot of that when I arrived. Like, I was really holding fast to the pedagogical lessons that I had in classroom, because that's what I was launched into. This is how you construct a lesson plan. This is how you get the kids to get work done. This is how you communicate with your peers. Like, it was all very prescriptive. I think that had I started doing reflective practice, it would have sounded like I was writing textbooks. It really would have. Like, I still would have been, because in a lot of ways, a lot of my writing that I did when I was still in industry and restaurants was textbook writing. I was writing recipes, highly structured, formulaic, procedural type of writing. And that was the same with my costing. Everything else, it was so procedural that's probably what my reflection would have been in the beginning. I don't think there was any space for the reflective practice that can allow for the what if. It would only have been what is. Now, for some people, that might have been valuable to sort of read. Who knows? No, a shared experience, a shared lived experience. But I can remember for my first 2 years of teaching, maybe 3 years when I was teaching culinary, I was constantly bombarded with the fact that the student walking in my classroom reminded me quite specifically of someone that I had managed at the restaurant. It took about 3 to 4 years for that to disappear, and for me to start seeing the kids as individuals coming in and not as their older self that I had met when I was working in the restaurant already. I can't tell you the number of times I would meet a kid and I would say, oh, that's why Mike in the restaurant is the way he is, because he was like this when he was 16. I did that constantly. It took me a long time to actually see the kids. And I think it was probably not until I was maybe my 5th or 6th year where I thought that I had kind of scrubbed those templates of the people I'd worked with and started to see the kids in front of me as individuals unto themselves. So probably 5 to 6 years in, it would have been valuable to start my reflective practice, which, had I done that, that would give me almost a decade of, stuff to look back on. And then my book.
Your book?
My book. Then I write my book based on 10 years. Yeah. That's what I would do.
Who's going to publish that for you?
I self-publish, baby. Yeah. Self-publish.
Yeah, you self-publish it. I won't even read it.
I know. It's all in my posts. Anything that's there. We talked about that before. It's all in my posts. We talked
about that before. Yeah, we've written our books.
Yeah, I haven't held anything back. You want my book? It's there in my blog. It's there in my tweets. If you have access to my Insta, it's there too.
Hey, one thing I want to touch before we go,
okay,
is, and maybe you can, I don't know what your thoughts are on how okay, so I was kind of freaked out this week, and you and I talked about this earlier in the week about how I discovered a short video that I had made about innovation 2 years ago. And just discovered it the other day, which caused me to go to the blog post I had written that connects to the video. And I was blown away by the fact that I was thinking in a way 2 years ago about how some of the people around me today are thinking. And it was just it was surreal to think that I was thinking at a relatively deep level 2 years ago, and how some of that digital stuff gets lost along the way. But I'm glad I found it. I shared it with you because I knew you'd understand, and I wanted to see what you think.
It's where we started the blog talking about Trevor Mackenzie. 2 years ago, you were repping reflective practice in an active fashion. Here's what just happened to me. Here's what I think about it. I would love to talk to someone about this. If we're going to talk about it, why don't you write a blog post? You sort of pushed out that idea of that full kind of approach to. I felt as if you were not only saying you would love someone to talk to you, but I also felt like there was some prompt within that to just get out and do this yourself. Give it a ride. Give it a try. I'd love it if you talked to me about it. I also had the sense like you would equally love it if someone just test drove the exact same thing in their classroom. So, yeah, I thought that I think it's a reasonable. I see that as a reasonable kind of part of your process. It seemed like you. It reminded me of you. It connected with who you are today. I thought.
That's good feedback for me on that topic. I think a bunch of stuff has changed over 2 years, but I'm glad that my thinking and my understanding of innovation hasn't changed. I think that's a good thing. Some people would argue it's not, but I don't think that's a bad thing. The other thing I want to say about that is only one person engaged me at the time about it. And then I think I may have responded with, hey, what are you going to do with this now? And nothing happened, which kind of sucks. When you're looking to get feedback or to engage in a conversation or a discussion around a topic, and there's nobody there to do it with you, it kind of stinks. And I think that's why what we do here is powerful for us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not just work related. We've got the parenting thing going on. We've got the outside of work stuff too, which is a lot of fun. Like, I think it's funny, if somebody were to read our correspondence, I would say it's 50% like EDU stuff and then 50% non-EDU stuff, which goes with some of our silly thinking, our parenting, just the everyday stuff that goes on with the way you live your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I value. I mean, that's not gonna happen to anybody who engages me on innovation. I'm not gonna probably jump into the 50% outside of EDU, but that could happen. It's just, so now maybe people can get a flavor for why the nonsense on Twitter is really starting to get on our nerves. Because when you're looking for authentic conversation, and I gotta go to this thing about people being positive. I'm not saying people should be telling, like, if I have a disagreement with my children at home, I'm not saying I should be tweeting, hey, I just had a fight with my 12-year-old. Like, that's not, it's this overly positive nonsense. Like, forgetting the fact that bad things happen, and in your purpose as a teacher, you're not every lesson's going to get hit out of the park. It's just not going to happen. Some days don't even get past the first 10 minutes of the day because there's a situation or something's happened in your home life or something's happened in your school life, and it's just not going to be a day that's going to progress the way that it should. I'm sorry. Are people not going to talk about that? I'm saying it here and now. Sometimes that happens. I mean, if you have a week that's wasted, there's something going on. You need to deal with that. But here and there, things happen. And you just got to go with the flow. And I think that people forget those things or they ignore them. I guess that's fine too. But I don't expect to be reading people's not good things all day. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's one thing to be positive. It's one thing to be overly positive in a fake way. But also, I think there's space. There is space for there's space for some authenticity, but like I'm just trying to think of, like people have said to me before, your social media presence is not authentic. My response is, well, tell me more. What's not authentic? And then they'll start talking about like, you don't talk about failure and stuff. And I'm like, if you look deep enough, you'll see failure. Not everything works out the way it's supposed to. Sometimes I talk about that. Most of the time I don't, but I'd like to. So I've kind of shifted gears. So I've used that feedback for positive, but then, they'll dig even deeper and they'll be like, well, you don't talk about like the things that get in your way. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm not going to share my entire life with you. I don't know who you are. Right. So when I do share stuff, it's what I choose to share. Now, the interesting thing is this mode of communication with you, and you and I talked about this, but I don't think we talked about it live on air. But some of the things I talk about on the podcast, I don't talk about anywhere else, which is kind of weird because it's live and it's recorded. So anybody can go back to it and watch it. But there's
heck, tweet us and actually change the course of our conversation while we're talking. That's another fascinating thing that's never happened, because that would happen if someone tweeted us while we were talking and jumped in and had, made some sort of comment. That would change. That would be awesome. It would actually be pretty awesome to be sort of someone to throw down some sort of like listening to, Chins and Clough right now. They are so off base. or something else, maybe something a little bit more detailed. But I would,
They just politely listen to it after it's been recorded.
Yeah, they could.
They might jump at us here and there, but
yeah,
what I've realized is there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of layers to a lot of different things. That's been my big thing for 2018. The business of layers, business of like complication, scar tissue. There's a lot of reasons why people do and don't do the things that they think they might need to do, or that don't even know they need to do it yet. And I think I'm setting myself up here for 2019. I'm thinking that in 2019, I would like to continue my reflective practice in a more public way.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I think it holds me accountable. I also think it's a great way in 2018 to record my process so that in 2 years from now, I can look at it again. I can be like, holy cow, I was doing that 2 years ago. And kind of like, it's kind of like a check. Like, am I on the right track? Was I ever on the right track? What do I need to do to get on the right track? And the cool thing is the right track is subjective. Now that I saw my short video about innovation from 2 years ago, I feel good about where I was 2 years ago, and I feel good about where I am today in terms of what is innovation, where does it come from, how does it play out. I wish that there was a true formula for it, but there isn't. It just appears to me that it comes from necessity, and it comes from a place of comfort in terms of taking risks and doing things you believe in that are showing positive outcomes, and then learning how to streamline that or how to engage people in a way to get more of that. So when somebody says to me, here's my problem, fix it, I don't think I do very well with those. I think I do better with, here's your classroom for the year. Here are the kids in front of you. Let's see if you can cause any kind of innovation. What can come out of this year that's innovative? And I think in that way, I see needs. How do you meet those needs in a way that causes, positive outcomes for kids and for me? And I think from there, you might be able to pick out one or two things that are innovative. But if you say to me, here's my problem, how do I fix this? And here are all my restrictions. I don't know. I'd like to think, I'm not going to tell you that I won't work on it, but that doesn't fit with like how I see myself dealing with innovation and necessity. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I'm definitely open to it. And I'm open to learning more about how people solve problems, how people get through things. For me, it's all about hacking the system. It's all about hacks. It's all about where can you cut a corner? How can you cut a corner without losing effectiveness? It's just really cool. It was really cool for me to see. And I think I needed to feel like I'm doing something right, and I'm doing it right by me.
Mm-hmm.
So to somebody else's standard, it might not be right. But again, I'm not doing it for someone else's standard. I'm doing it for my own.
Couple last thoughts. I give my students, I've done this quite often. I just did it with my grade 12s. It's a process piece where they create a time capsule for themselves. Maybe I told you about this last week. And in it, I let them, in the last 4 weeks of class, they could insert different artifacts into it. I have a couple assigned ones just to provoke some thinking, but also tell them you can put whatever you want in there. And I tell them in June, before you leave school, I'm gonna show up in one of your classes, because I have them right now in learning strategies, but I won't have them next semester. I'll be monitoring them. I'm gonna have to go looking for them. They get the big courier manila envelopes, so they just keep packing it in there, packing it in there, packing it in there. I said, I'm gonna show up in that last week of school. You're gonna see me come in. You're gonna know it's yours because you've blinged up the outside and colored it and customized it, and I'm gonna hand it to you, and you get to see firsthand the distance between where you are right now and where you were back in January. So you get this really quick snapshot of, and it's an emotional snapshot first, because by presenting the envelope to them right away, they're already like, oh my gosh, like maybe they remember the envelope, maybe they don't. What did I put in there? I wonder what I put in there. One of the pieces that I have them fill out first is a little bit of an autobiography, but not so much as in, it's an autobiography kind of like a led by questions. And there's fine print at the bottom. And I always tell them, I said, make sure you read the fine print first on the bottom of that piece of paper. And in summary, it basically says, be as truthful as possible on this piece of paper and everything that you put in the time capsule. I said, because you'll know if you've been lying. And I walk them through that afterwards. I say, there's a value to sort of being authentic, and whether you like it or don't like it, but just being authentic. Because if you sort of slough off on this and you just put something into the package that you find 6 months from now, your value of what you've created will be less satisfying. It'll be less, you'll be less emotionally connected to it. So I think of this as like a time capsule for you to come across it again and to see that you're on point and that it's still a challenge in what you're pushing forward. There's a really cool connectivity there. That's the first thought. The second thought is in thinking about process pieces that aren't tidy, but very provocative for me. I got to throw some kudos out to Kelly McKay and Andrea Kerr, who both are findable on Twitter and both blog together under The Beast EDU. And I read their posts, and I will say I have to read their posts 3-4 times before I get a feel for the big picture that they're writing in. And I can really appreciate that reflective practice that isn't specifically telling me what to do, and there's nothing tidy about it. And I would encourage anyone to go and sort of check out one of their blog posts, because it's really, it's a little bit like stream of consciousness. But if you have a grounding in your practice and you've been paying attention to your practice, there's something that you catch on to. I would say if you're not really paying attention to your practice and you go to read them, you might kind of go, what's going on here? But I really like the way that they assemble their blog posts, which is a little bit of a sketch note, a little bit of a, bit of prose-ish, I don't know, I guess. And then they'll put at the tail end their conversation. So it's like they're driving in at some point together, or they're in the cafeteria together and they're having a back and forth. Andrea says something, Kelly says something. Like, it's a really cool way to sort of, it's the type of reflective practice that if they're teaching for another 10 years and they go back and they look at that stuff, it is so rich that inevitably it's going to be a valuable reflective practice. And definitely I would say a ninja level that you couldn't necessarily do when you're in your first year of teaching. One is a special education, I don't know if consultant or head, but definitely involved in special education. I think the other one might be a principal. I forget. who's got what, but they've got a nice array of life experience, lived experience in EDU that just makes their blog posts, they're out there, but I really dig it. I like how I don't understand it at first blush. I have to work to figure it out.
I'm happy to hear you say that you don't understand it, because sometimes I don't either. It's like it's deep. Even in their Twitter profile at the Beast EDU, it says the Beast is a conversation about learning for the curious, critical thinking educator. We got to figure this out. It's a beast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just right there. I notice here that they have a pinned tweet from May 12th. It's a YouTube video of them. So their stuff is deep. It's good. I appreciate it as well. I don't feel like they have the traction that they deserve, or I think are entitled to. Like 185 followers. So like,
that's mind-blowing to me.
There's a lot. That's been another thing I've noticed lately. There are a lot of people on Twitter who have a lot of good things to say, and I think they're not being heard because they just don't have enough traction yet. And I think it'd be really sweet if some of these people with thousands of followers who are writing books and pushing their brand so hard could take 5 friggin' minutes a week and like tweet out some of this stuff and have some of their blind followers dig in. Because with the blind followers, you're going to have people who are looking for stuff like this, who are purposefully waiting for someone like that to push out something like this.
And part of it is there's like, I don't think either one of them are looking, they're not looking to build a brand. I don't think that they're looking to sort of expand that conversation wider than they can actively participate in. It may be intentional, right? They're entirely good. There is something to the, having that coffee shop on the corner that just has the best coffee, and you're always just a little bit worried about, it's going to become so popular that they can't deliver the capacity or the quality that they're doing. So part of it is I'm pretty happy knowing that Kelly and Andrea are doing these posts and writing, and that I know of it because I really appreciate it. And I'm not saying necessarily that if they were to be stretched with more followers, that it would be any less genuine than it is. But there is a truth in there in your drive to sort of connect with people that want to have conversations. I really appreciate the fact that I'm kind of part of a smaller circle of people that I feel like I can ask them a question and get to them. And we can get to those layers. It's kind of like I said, you're sitting in your coffee shop, just like really digging the vibe and the space. There is something cool to having a smaller space, a smaller circle, and still have the depth that they're pushing out. So I dig that. I appreciate that.
Okay, dude. I think this episode of Decoded,
to close the year.
Yeah.
This is our last one for 18. Next time we land.
It was a beast.
It was a beast. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Kelly.
After Dark. Decoded podcast After
Beast
Dark.
After Dark. Decoding the Beast After Dark.
Highlights. We got to rant, and I didn't say anything bad on the air.
Lots of peeps we shouted out to, too. Sharesky, Aldridge, Mackenzie. What was the McKay?
Our dedicated followers.
Yeah, our dedicated followers.
That's 5. The big 5.
Big 5. That's good.
Okay, so hey, man, wishing you a great New Year's Eve, which is rolling up on us in a couple of days, and looking forward to continuing our conversations weekly. That's cool, man. Thanks for the Hulk hands. Now I'm on a mission. I have to find them. And
they actually make noise too, I think, eh?
Really?
Yeah, I think there's just the foamy ones. There's just the ones that are foamy, but I think there's other ones that when you kind of put your hands into it, like if you do this, It actually says the Hulk smash.
I just want the foam ones.
Just the foam hands. Okay, yeah, the foam hands would be awesome.
Come on, I haven't written the book yet. I have no money.
Hulk smash EDU. All right,
Hulk
dude.
smash is EDU.
Oh, smashes. I just put Hulk smash EDU.
Hey, you do whatever you do. That's your picture. I'm not going to tell you how to do it.
All right.
Just when you say it and you connect it to me, I need to say something.
Okay.
Okay, have a good one. I'll talk to you soon.
You too, man. Take care.
See ya.